Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, I Like to Cake. Today I'll be showing you how to assemble and decorate this American flag surprise cake. This cake is really fun because when you cut into it, you reveal an American flag. It's perfect for the 4th of July, Memorial Day, Veterans Day, or anytime you're feeling patriotic, really. So let's get started. As you can see here, we're going to need some red cake, some white cake, and some blue cake. Now, I made a white cake separately, and then I just took some vanilla cake and colored it blue and red for the blue and red pieces. But you can also just use boxed white cake mix and color some of it blue and red. So here I have my blue cake layer, and I'm just leveling off the top a little bit so it's kind of flat. And I'm making a 7-inch cake, so my blue cake layer is about 1.5 inches tall. Now we'll take our red cake layer, and that's actually about the same height as the blue cake, but we're going to cut this into 3 thin layers. Now, if you want to simplify this, you can just cut it in half and use it that way, but I'm going to cut this into 3 thin layers. Now, the cake leveler tool that I usually use was not going to be able to cut the levels thin enough, so what I did is I used it as a guide, and then I went in with a knife and cut the thin layers that I wanted. Now this part is a little bit tricky. You have to very gently cut all the way around and try and keep the knife level, and then you keep going around and cut a little bit deeper into the cake until you get all the way to the middle. This definitely takes some practice, so when you're starting out, my advice is to just make really small cuts as you're cutting around the cake. So after we cut our first layer off, we're going to go ahead and use that as a guide to cut the next layer. And again, just go around the edge, cutting in a little bit, and then start making deeper and deeper cuts until you get to the center. And now we're just going to repeat the same process with the white. I also recommend refrigerating your cakes before you cut them because it'll cause less crumbs to fall off while you're cutting and you'll get cleaner lines. In order to make the blue part of the flag, what we want to do is cut out the center of our blue cake layer. This way it'll create a ring around the cake, and when you cut a slice, that'll be the blue section of the flag in your slice. So my round cutter here is a 3-inch cutter for my 7-inch cake. If you were to do a 9-inch cake, you'd want to use something that's somewhere between 4 and 5 inches. You could also just cut out a circle of parchment paper and use that as a guide if you don't have a circle cutter like I have. Now when we're assembling our cake, we're going to need something to put inside that hole we just cut out. So take the same cutter and cut some red and white cake out. Now I suggest using the top layer of the red and white cake that we cut off because it has a little bit of a mound, and you want to cut out of the thickest part of that because we're actually going to cut this red layer in half again. Now if your red cake and your white cake actually turned out to be super flat and you don't have that mound on top, instead of cutting the cake into 3 layers like we did earlier, you're going to want to cut it into 4 layers. Or, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you want a simplified version of this cake, just cut your red and white layers in half and level off the top. Now to assemble, as always, we're going to put a little bit of our buttercream down on the cake board so that our cake can stick to it. Then go ahead and grab the first full thin layer of red cake and place it down on your cake board, and then spread some icing on top. Now we want a pretty thin layer of the white icing here because the white cake is going to act as our white stripe. We don't want too much icing because that'll throw off the balance of the red layers and the white layers. And then we're just going to repeat this process a couple more times. We'll place a white layer of cake, put a thin layer of frosting on top, then a red layer of cake, frosting, then one more white layer of cake and frosting, and then we'll get to the blue. Okay, so now we're ready to place the blue ring of cake on top. And now we need to put some icing inside that ring to help the smaller red and white layers stick inside. Otherwise, if you don't do this frosting in between, what'll happen when you cut your cake open is that these will all fall apart and you won't have a nice cohesive American flag design inside. So now we're going to take one of our small red circles and place that in the middle of the blue circle, and then we'll go ahead and spread some white icing on top, and then place a small white circle of cake inside, and then again more icing. And I only had room for one more cake layer in here, so I placed one more red layer on top, and then I was finished. Now we're going to do our crumb coat as always, so that's just a thin layer of icing. And I was kind of running a little low on icing, so my crumb coat is very thin. You don't have to make yours that thin, but you do need something there because the design we're doing needs something to stick to. Unlike usual, we're actually not going to put this in the fridge or the freezer after we're done with the crumb coat. We're just going to go straight to piping on our decoration. For our decoration, we're going to take red, white, and blue icing, and I'm using a Wilton 1M star piping tip, and we're just going to pipe on some stars all the way around the bottom layer of the cake. To pipe stars, what you want to do is hold the piping tip perpendicular to the surface of the cake, hold it just a little away from the surface of the cake, squeeze some icing out, and then stop squeezing as you lift away. Whenever you're using icing in a piping bag, after you squeeze some out, you want to go ahead and tighten the bag down. So I just twist the top of my piping bag, and then after I squeeze out a few stars, I'll twist it again to tighten it up, and then pipe out a few stars, twist it again, and so on. Because you want that pressure in the bag to help you pipe out the stars, otherwise your hand will get tired really fast because you're squeezing harder than you need to. So as you can see, after I did the red layer, I went in and used white icing and piped another layer of stars. And now we're going to do one more layer of red stars. And then we're going to go in with our blue and pipe the entire top of the cake in the same way. So for the top of the cake, I'm gonna just go in circles, working from the outside in, and I'll pipe a few blue stars and then throw a white one in there, and then a few more blue and then a white one. And I just created kind of a random pattern of white stars here. If you want to be more systematic about it, feel free. But I kind of like the non-uniform look of the stars on the cake. And there you have it. This is our American flag surprise cake. And now I'll show you the cross sections. When you cut into it, you get this awesome American flag inside every slice of cake. And I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you make this for the 4th of July or any time, please send me your pictures at iliketocake.baker@gmail.com, and I would love to put your pictures in one of my next videos. Thanks for watching!